So, hello everybody. It's my great pleasure to invite you all, first of all, to the IJDDC, which is the International Journal for Diabetes in Developing Countries, the podcast. And we are very thankful to our editor-in-chief, Dr. Rajiv Chawla, sir, for actually helping us, come up with all these newer concepts for IJDDC. All you RSSDI members, you're extremely lucky and fortunate because today, with limited access for different articles, you get to log into your members area on the website of RSSDI and access this journal for absolutely nothing. So do get access to all the fantastic articles and publications and enhance your knowledge pool and as well as skills. Without much ado, let me get to the crux of this particular podcast, which is with none other than Dr. Vaishali Deshmukh, ma'am, whose name used to be just, synchronous with endocrinology, but now I can tell you that it's beyond endocrinology because it's more of mind body metabolism and mind body interaction and the tremendous work and effort that she's put in to this new field emerging in India. So she's synonymous with that, and it's our pleasure and honor actually to have her with us today on this particular podcast. So welcome, ma'am, and let me formally just introduce her. Dr. Vaishali Deshmukh is a senior endocrinologist from the city of Pune, and she's an assistant professor in endocrinology at Sassoon General Hospital and BJMC Pune. She's also the consultant and head of the endocrine department at Dinanath Mangeshkar and Deshmukh Clinic in Pune, founder and secretary NGO of Sphere for Sphere. And besides having a brilliant academic career with loads of gold medals, she has been awarded by the Jeevan Gaurav Purashkar, the Kranti Surya Pratishthan, and so on and so forth. She has several high quality publications as well. She's been a mentor and has teaching experience that is more than 3 decades, has authored many chapters in prestigious journals and textbooks, and has been extensively researching now and also practicing mind body medicine. But for all of us or most of us, this is an sort of a gray area or an area that intrigues us more than anything because we understand so little about it. So let's use this opportunity to pick her brains some more on this aspect. Welcome, ma'am.
Yeah, hello, Dr. Purvi, and I thank RSSDI and of course Dr. Chawla for helping me to get this mind-body medicine into the mainstream of literature. And I'm so glad that Dr. Purvi and her team is able to take this to the audience through a podcast. And I'm sure that viewers would definitely love this arena because, as you rightly mentioned, it has not been a well-spoken area most of the times, in fact, I would like to say that when I started working into this field, people thought I'm quitting medicine and I'm going into Babagiri. And so they thought that I will go into something like religion or casteism or something like that. And I think that it's a totally different area which has nothing to do with any caste, religion, creed, or maybe country also. It is a human science. It's a neuro part of neuroscience that we are looking into. So we are people of science looking into it in a very scientific fashion. And I'm so glad that I'm here today. Thank you so much, Dr. Puri.
I think that's very synchronous with seeing those, more than 150 references that have been used with respect to the body medicine position statement that's come out in this edition of Jan to March publication of IGDDC from RSSDI. Uh, we are very intrigued, ma'am. And particularly, I would love you to explain the PNIE concept as well.
So, Purvi, PNI stands for a short form for Psychoneuroimmune Endocrinology. Now, why it is labeled as PNI is because we know that non-communicable diseases which are on a rise, epidemic rise, they have a common base. They have dysfunction of all these four systems. They have a dysfunction of psychology, they have a dysfunction of neurology, immunology, and endocrinology, and they are no longer single organ diseases. So it's not like lung is affected and only that is treated. So it is a network disease. So when we are talking about non-communicable diseases like obesity, pre-diabetes, diabetes, hypertension, ischemic heart disease, they are network science disorders. So if you remember our undergraduate days, people used to say that when you have multi-system involvement, think of endocrine disorders or think of rheumatological disorders. So the reason being that multiple systems, when they get involved, you get something of this network being affected at the crux of it. And that is why you get diabetes, that is why you get obesity, that is why you get. So, if you know this, you will be able to treat individually the psychoneuroimmune endocrine dysfunction. Then you will be able to treat the disease holistically. You cannot treat a diabetes unless you treat the psyche of the patient, unless you treat the immunity of the patient, unless you treat the neuro of the patient. So it is very important to understand that when we are people who are treating non-communicable diseases, we need to understand that all these four systems need to be normal when we are treating a person holistically. So that's the concept.
Fantastic. And ma'am, we almost missed that connection because we are so used to undermining the impact of the mind, or looking at even how mind could actually drive diabetes. We look at it, I mean, for years together we thought it was only the pancreas, and then later on we thought about the ominous octet and the dirty dozen. So all those concepts have come, but we've never looked at the mind really as a driver for diabetes. Would love you to elaborate on that.
Yeah, so all these years, our literature, our books have mentioned that diabetes causes diabetes distress, diabetes causes mental depression, and many more conditions. But the focus about how mind affects the occurrence of diabetes has been very less all these years. So I'm sure our books don't mention how angry person is more prone for diabetes, or how a depressed person is more prone for diabetes. So now what mind body medicine is looking into is how the mind dysfunction drives you to occurrence of diseases. So, like for example, it has been proven in literature, lot of studies being done which say that if you have depression, then there is a 60% chance of you getting diabetes in future, or there is a good chance that you are likely to have cardiovascular comorbidities. Similarly, it has been found that those who have anxiety as a primary nature, a behavioral nature which is more anxious, these are more prone for getting diabetes, nearly 18 to 20% higher chances of getting diabetes. So the odds ratio of getting any non-communicable disease like diabetes, hypertension, or ischemic heart disease is high with depression, anxiety, even simple things like hostility or a in fact, this is very interesting to know. When we were going through the literature, diabetes was said to occur as a result of sorrow. Diabetes would occur. So there is some sadness, element of, you can say, hostility in the mind, which is responsible for occurrence of diabetes. So there has been shown. Why is it known? Because when we are thinking about sadness or we're thinking about anger, we know that there is a lot of neurochemical change in the synapses of the brain, which is known to affect the glucose metabolism. You know that glucose metabolism, one of the organs of the octet is the brain.
Correct.
So when your synapses are being affected, your brain is being affected. And brain is the ultimate controller of all the endocrine systems. So basically, whenever the behavior changes, and vice versa, those who are happy-go-lucky, those who are very positive, they are those who are into meditative mode, they are less likely to get into diabetes, hypertension. We have seen reversals also occurring with certain techniques. And I think you see those who practice yoga for years together, they have less of blood pressure problems and less of sugars. So, how mind drives your occurrence of these hormones is what mind body medicine teaches us. So, mind is a very important. So, what I think has been neglected for years together is the impact of mental health. Even simple things like early childhood adversity. Suppose my childhood was a very sad childhood or a childhood which was full of trauma. It is known to increase the chances of getting these disorders in adulthood. So, it is also one of the prime causes for occurrence of obesity, which is one of the reasons why diabetes would occur. So, I think that there are a lot of factors in the mind which are neglected as we commonly mention genetics as a cause of diabetes, then family history, then a lack of exercise diet, but hardly we pay attention to how your mental health has caused the occurrence of diabetes. So I think this is high time we start focusing on mental health as one of the important drivers for occurrence of diabetes.
Fantastic, ma'am. And I think that explains why you have a separate position statement from the RSSDI Task Force for Mind Body Medicine. And I think that I'm soaking in more and more of why you had to come up with the separate position statement. But further to the statement being released, I would love you to give us some more insights into why did you publish this, and what can the reader gain from it.
Yeah, so what we realized, our group which is working, we have team of neuropsychiatrists, neuroscience people, and psychiatrists who are a part of the authorship along with the people from the non-communicable segment, including cardiologists. But what we thought is that it is mind-body medicine is a modifiable risk factor for diabetes. See, there are very few things we can really change in diabetes occurrence, and it's a very important modifiable risk factor. It is the cheapest one. It doesn't require any sort of classes, coaching, training. It doesn't require anything in terms of expenditure. And even then, it is underutilized. So, this was the problem, the loophole in the current diabetes practice, which made us realize that yes, it has to go to people. People have to understand that this is one of the risk factors. People need to understand that this is a modifiable risk factor. Thirdly, they need to understand that this is a doable risk factor. So everybody, whether you are socioeconomically backward, whether you are literate, illiterate, every patient can follow some mind-body medicine technique to help the diabetes control or prevention of diabetes or prevention of obesity. So unless you help that, you're not going to help the disease. So we have seen, I'm sure you will agree with me that you've seen that a person under chronic stress, you give whatever medicines, you give whatever best of the anti-diabetic and antihypertensive, and still the patient is not under control. And then you tell him that you take this pill and you will feel relaxed, and the next day his sugars are down. You understand? So very simple. It's either through drugs or not through drugs. You realize that as soon as you're treating the mind, the octet is taken care of, the brain is taken care of, and then you are getting the results that you're expecting. So, if this is so much of a impactful mode of therapy, why not discuss this in a separate statement? And who is going to discuss beyond us? Because we are people of science, we are people of neuroscience, we are people who scientifically, with literature evidence, can show to the world that yes, mind affects diabetes and mind is a modifiable risk factor. I can change my mind, I can train my mind. I can do this with simple techniques like just 5 minutes of breathing exercises. I don't need any money for it.
Ask you, what kind of interventions can we expect with this, and what is it, is there something like that we can just include in our prescription? Maybe not at the first go, but patients can adapt that kind of, it's part of the lifestyle modification as well. It's
Yes,
also well interrelated as you beautifully described. So, what
That's
are
a
those
perfect
interventions?
question I expected from you, and I just wanted to you to actually help me with it also through your experience because you have practiced this. I am sure that every good diabetologist is practicing mind body medicine for his or her patients. But nevertheless, if I have to classify and put it forth, I can tell you that in modern language, I can put it as every positive psychologic activity is going to help your prescription of diabetes. So, positive psychology means anything that boosts the morale of the patient, anything that makes him feel or good about himself, about the whole existence of that person, is going to help the sugar control better. Now, how can one do that? So, the techniques that you were asking me. So, it can start. See, my people are into the notion that mind body medicine is just sitting and meditating. It is not so. Not everybody is a meditative person. So, you can decide that what keeps your mind cool and happy. Suppose for me, partying keeps my mind cool. Partying becomes a positive psychology. But if my mind tells me that sitting quiet and just being with myself in a dark room, it makes me happy or peaceful, I can use that as my mind body technique. So I think it's a very tailor made sort of a technique. It's a very personalized technique. And basically, what we need to understand is that all these techniques are individualized based on the liking of the person. So the simplest thing one can do is pursue a hobby. Suppose my hobby is painting. What happens in a hobby is you become mindful, you become involved into that hobby. That mindfulness is what helps the sugars. So it is not the painting which helps the sugar, but that painting getting you involved mindfully makes your mind relaxed. And that is what is going to help your neurochemicals and help the control of diabetes. So this is the simplest technique. The following one hobby, every diabetic person should follow one hobby that he or she has. It can be trekking, it can be walking, it can be exercise, it can be sleeping, it can be relaxing, it can be just taking a leave or taking a break, and just being in nature. That's the simplest thing. Beyond that, if you want to talk about proper scientific techniques which have been studied, the best thing we have is yoga. Yoga is one of the techniques which works on multiple modes of mind health. So it works on the brain cells, it works on the synapses, it works on the nerves, it works on the neuromuscular junction, it works on the muscle. So if you want me to involve the whole system, neuromuscular and endocrine system, in one go, in one exercise, yoga is the best. Because yoga will do everything in one sort of exercise. But yoga can be done as a posture. Say I put my hand like this is yoga. But if I'm not paying attention to that hand, the need for what is right yoga is that my brain cell is focusing on this posture that I'm doing, and I'm looking through this pathway. So I'm looking from the cortex to the synaptic junctions, through the nerves, to the neuromuscular junction. I'm mindful of this whole tract, mindful of the position of my hand and the posture that I'm holding. And that's a complete yoga. So you can do yoga as a just a simple postures or exercise, like you say power yoga. But mindful yoga is what is the need for a good mind body technique. Now, if you are not a yoga person, you can do dancing. You can do any aerobic activity which gets you totally involved into it. Or you can do deep breathing exercise. Suppose a lot of patients tell me, Madam, I can't move my hand, I can't move my leg, I'm getting osteoarthritis pain. So you can just breathe. You can just breathe, you can breathe deep, you can breathe mindfully, you can breathe through meditation, or there are a lot of breathing exercises, breathing apps, lot of meditation apps are there. And if you can't do anything, then the easiest is to do sleep meditation. So you just lie down and you do certain meditation, you can say affirmations or meditations or some listening or simple music or simple silence. Even silence itself is a good meditative act. So what it is, the whole gist of this is to try cool down your mind. See, what we forget, Purvi, is we ask for diet, we ask for exercise, we ask for medications, and we ask for good healthy muscle building. What we forget is to relax. So relaxation is an essentiality of your prescription. So how many of us really tell our patients that you should relax half an hour a day? The importance of napping, the importance of getting your mind cooled down. I think why we are seeing a lot of comorbidities with over exercisers or enthusiastic gymmers is because they are not failing to cool down. So you what basically mind body medicine does is it gives a sympathetic parasympathetic balance. And that is what the body requires when you want to control your sugars. It requires a balanced autonomic system, not a sympathetic overbalance or a underbalance of the parasympathetic. So I think this is the whole principle of mind body medicine. So I think it's a very broad platter of mind exercises that you can hold for yourself, and everybody has to decide his own. And you can see that nothing of this involves money. Nothing of this involves lot of time. You do it 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's not a big expenditure. And if you can't find time in your busy schedule, do it just before sleep or just as you wake up in the morning. So simple little things, and you can just go into nature. Lot of trekkers enjoy that. Lot of people who go to the say the Himalayas or Titlis or wherever, they feel nature cools them down. So just go to nature. That is itself a cooling sort of a technique for the body. So one needs to practice this into your prescription as a daily basis.
Fantastic. So, I think this is anchoring everything that some of us were intuitively doing, but I think this as a structure, and I think this is totally proving why this tenet as a position statement was required. I think we have always underestimated the power of the mind in that respect, or thought that some X person is going to do that for are people living with diabetes. But I think this is so much more about healing and anything than just a prescription of medicines. So very well described, ma'am, and it reaffirms my belief also in it. Just very, very positive, I think, learning from this entire discussion. So, ma'am, what else is the Mind Collaborative Group working on?
Yeah, so we are mainly working on positive psychology because the role of positive psychology is there with all NCDs. So, very simple is diabetics who are unhappy, diabetics who are sad or distressed or who are depressed are having poor outcomes as compared to those diabetics who have accepted their disease, who are positive about themselves, who are resilient in their own terms. We know that diabetes is known to affect immunity. Even mind is known to affect immunity. So basically what we are working on is we are working on different mind body techniques for our patients. So we have structured programs of mind body techniques where any person of any caliber, of any educational strata can practice it into the community. So we have workshops which we are doing for patients, we are doing it for doctors, paramedics, and people who are not trained into the mind health. We know that mind is a trainable, or mind is like a monkey. It just keeps on jumping. That monkey has to streamline. It's like a flock of sheep. If you leave it the way it is going to just go haywire. So
It's
haywire
decided.
mind, yes. So you have to do the minding job of the sheep. So what the herd person does is that he gets the sheep all together in a line and gets them streamlined. That is what we are trying to do through our workshops. We are telling the people and we are training people as to how you can get this flock of sheep into a small gathering and get it streamlined and get it more focused. Now, what happens is because of this, the involvement of the patients into self care is significant. So what happens is I understand that mind, once I've seen this, that when we have started practicing mind body medicine, people realize that yes, I have to take care of my mind. See, hardly we speak with a patient that you have to take care of your mind. Once you just tell them a single statement that please take care of your mind, think positive, don't think negative, sleep well, eat well. Rather we are focusing more on getting this circadian misalignment into a proper thing. So circadian misalignment, I'm sure you understand, and a lot of our audience would also understand that most of them who are supposed to sleep at night wake up at night, eat up late night, and it's true for doctors also. We are poor patients anyways, but nevertheless, one needs to follow the nature's clock. So nature wakes up, you have to wake up. Nature sleeps, you have to sleep. Nature eats, you have to eat. So you eat during the sunlight hours, you don't eat during the dark hours. So all this, if you are able to follow your the whole biological clock synchronizes with your PNIE. And that PNI in sync with your biological clock gets your metabolism settled. Then your weight loss is easy. Now, what happens is that in practice, I'm treating with semaglutide, I'm treating with tirzepatide, I'm getting weight loss medicines into picture. But it's not working. Why it's not working? Because the rhythm is not maintained. The circadian rhythm is not taken care of. The mind is not taken care of. So I'm just focusing on follow diet, follow exercise, and follow my medicine. It's not going to work. So when you're thinking about holistic benefits that you have to offer to your patients of diabetes, obesity, diabetes, you have to think whether the psychology has been normalized. Now, very simple example is lot of obese people don't sleep well. They, if they don't sleep well, whatever, for OSA or for reasons unknown, if they don't sleep well, they are never going to lose weight. So if they are not able to sleep through these techniques, a simple small dose of a sleeping pill might help them for some days. And if they are able to sleep well, get their rhythm into picture, their polycystic ovary will be taken care of, their menstrual cycle will be taken care of, their weight loss will be taken care of. So it is so simple to understand that getting yourself synced to nature in terms of the biological. See, we are a part of nature in the cosmos. So we are made of the same elements that the nature is made of. So finally, you have to help how you are synchronizing with nature, and that is what will keep you in a healthy shape. Now we have found that positive psychology techniques. So why this realization came to us? In fact, in a camp we did a survey. We asked our patients who are our old patients, very happy with us, very well controlled, that are you happy with our drugs and are you taking our medicines? And they said yes, we are following everything that you have told. But what? We are following yoga, but we are following wellness activities. So people are interested in wellness, they are not interested in getting illness treated, you understand? So we are doctors, we are able to treat illnesses, we are not able to deliver wellness. That's what we realized. So we should now be angels to deliver wellness. So I think it is high time that we as doctors not only treat illness but think of wellness of our patients in various fashions. So we have started now working on what we call as CGI health. CGI health means there are different anchors of health. So anchors of health, one is sleep, second is eating routine, nutrition, third is your exercise pattern, fourth is your muscle and locomotive skills, and fifth is your mind health, that is positive psychology. So if you're able to focus on these anchors, only then you're able to treat diabetes and obesity as a totality. Otherwise, you're treating it only, you're becoming a pharmacist or a chemist prescriber. You understand? You're just giving a drug because a drug is reducing glucose and you're just reducing the sugar level without helping the patient. So you're treating a illness without helping the wellness of the patient. So I think it's a different outlook towards how you are treating your patients for diabetes.
Absolutely. And I think my key takeaway is that not only is there tremendous application in diabetes, as you explained, obesity, hypertension, even cardiovascular disease. Of course, with more and more of us practicing this, we will be able to generate Indian evidence as well to see the hard outcomes. But I think this has a huge role to play in prevention. You also mentioned there are many cases of reversal. So, in the same breath, I would like to extend it and, just reaffirm what you've said that, it's definitely part of wellness and it can prevent these metabolic complications as well. So I think this is a fantastic new novel concept which has been existing for so many years, but it's beautifully studied and described by you, and I think needs to be formalized and sort of made a part of our prescription so that we are able to offer a better living and living with wellness rather than just looking at quality of life. I think even that questionnaire needs to be updated with this uh, because mental health, we definitely are undermining
And
that.
Dr. Puri, if you allow me to talk on one component of this, is that most of our doctors, or we feel that mind is the, you can say, arena of psychologist or psychiatrist. It is not so. Abnormal mind is their arena. A
Absolutely.
normal mind is the arena of people who treat chronic diseases.
Absolutely.
So 90% of our patients have a normal mind, and 10% are the ones who really require psychiatrists and psychologists. So I think every doctor who is treating a patient with chronic disease has to take into account mind health, because we are talking about maintenance of normal mental health. We are not talking about psychiatric treatments, or we are not talking about psychological counseling, because what we have learned in all this journey is that our Indian Psychiatry Society has told us that 90% of our problems of mind health can be dealt with by the primary physician. 10% require psychiatrists. So please be under the impression that mind health is the responsibility of the family doctor, not the psychiatrist. So please focus on this when you're treating your patients.
I think that's a great key takeaway from this entire publication as well. And if you have any, message for our IJDDC readers, or people who will access this publication, please go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, so I think this whole study of mind body medicine has helped us to design a obesity center which focuses on these holistic aspects. So I would request that at your own clinics or at your uh, possible locations, I would not say at, if it's not feasible in every clinic. Like for in Pune, we have started our own obesity center where we will focus on all these aspects of mind body medicine health, which doesn't focus on medicines. It focuses only on providing these services. So you have to, in your own town, city, establish one of the mind body medicine intervention center, so that everybody who doesn't have time, lot of diabetologists have very few minutes for to counsel the patient. So if you think that the patient needs all these services, you have to design in your own cities, own towns, these kind of small mind body centers which can really work. And I think RSSGI can definitely take this on a nationwide scale, because this is also one of the important national agendas to improve the mind health of the community. So that is one feedback which I would like to give back. And secondly, even I would recommend to all the diabetologists that whenever you're prescribing for diet and exercise and medical nutrition therapy, most of you have dietitians, but you also keep a mind health trainer into your clinics. So what we call as MHTs, the mind health trainers, apart from the MNTs. So these are the people who will talk about mind and help your patients to take care of their minds.
Fantastic. Absolutely, very energizing conversation, I would say. And I think all those who don't practice it, please do start thinking about it very seriously. Get mindful about it, so that, it will come as just second order to everything that you're doing. It will just flow naturally from your pen also to the patient. And I think it reaffirms some of us who have been talking in, vague terms to our patients that, maybe you need to do this to feel happier, or do that. I think it just consolidates everything really well. So thank you for that. And it's a great segue to further research studies as well, because we are practitioners of modern medicine. We don't take things, anything without evidence. But there are certain things that probably seem difficult to understand or to study more. But I think together and collectively, with such a great group leading us, we can definitely come up with some hard outcomes as well to study and evaluate mind body medicine. So, with that, I thank you very much on behalf of the entire IGDDC team for not just this publication, but taking additional time to discuss with us today in this informative podcast. Thank you so much, Dr.
Yeah,
Dev.
and let me thank RSSGI for establishing this mind body medicine task force. I think that has been one of the very important activity which RSSGI has done in India, and not only in India, it's for the first time in the world that somebody has taken up mind body medicine so seriously enough to get it into publication. I'm thankful for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you
Thank
again.
you.
It was really a very unraveling discussion, and we are thankful for your time and effort.
Thank you, Purvi. It was a pleasure talking to you.